I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Hello, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 5 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast, Adulting.
Adulting.
While the word adulting is no doubt a little cringe for its overuse in the past few years, that's not going to stop us from talking about it today.
I feel like you got to put a hashtag in front of it. Is that a thing? Or is that old? That's an old trend.
I think that's old. I think sometimes when I still say hashtag, people are like, what are you, 40?
Oh. I saw an adulting meme on Facebook the other day.
Did you really? So what do we mean by adulting? Adulting is defined as the practice of behaving in a way characteristic of a responsible adult, especially the accomplishment of mundane but necessary tasks. But today, I think we're going to expand on that definition a little bit. While the episode is called Adulting, we're not talking about hashtag laundry or hashtag paying taxes.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the misconception is like, oh, I'm tired of adulting. I'm just going to check out for the rest of the day and, drink wine on my couch. That might have been along the lines of the meme that I saw. So I think it goes beyond that, beyond the mundane responsibilities that come along with being an adult.
Yeah, I mean, we're both 39. We're headed into our 40s. Some of us a little sooner than the other. But since we've been doing this adulting thing for a while now, I mean, we've, in the last 20 years, graduated high school, graduated college, started careers and families. So we've been adults for a while. We've been responsible. We've doing the mundane but necessary tasks. I think this episode is a little bit more about sharing what we've learned about what it means to be an adult that goes beyond those things. Things that kind of like the rules for life, rules of the road, things that as now we move into our 40s, the things I'm excited about kind of doing more of and doing it better.
Yeah, I think in my original pitch to you for this episode, we were talking about, I think it could be like rules for living or how to live well, because we are at an age where we've been adults for long enough. And so the way I phrased it to you, and I'll phrase it to my lovely listeners, is so at this point, either we know how to live life and we are doing it. We know how to live life, but we're not doing it. Or we don't know how to live life, in which case, what the hell have we been doing? And so I think there's, obviously the goal is to know how to live life and to act upon the wisdom that we've gained. But I think that's easier said than done as well. But I also think that there's a lot to learn. And so there's a lot of things where we'll probably fall into that third category, where there's just stuff that we haven't picked up on yet that I'm hoping in the years to come that we'll learn even more about life.
Well, and that's what we say we enjoyed about our 30s, is that during our 30s, we got to kind of figure out a little bit more about who we are and what we wanted about life, what our values really are, not just the ones we were dictated, as kids and, as you grow into your own. And when I talk to people who are already 40 or in their 40s, I said, I loved my 30s, and they're like, just wait until you get into your 40s. It's even better.
Yeah.
And so you and I have now created a list of maybe our top 5 lessons about being an adult that we feel resonate with us, that are good for a good life and good living, and that we're hoping to continue.
Yeah. All right. So, actually, before I get into the specific format for this episode, I want to tell you that the first thing I thought of when I was preparing notes was Lord of the Flies, which I know you're familiar with. Many of you listeners will be familiar with as well, with the group of British boys around 12, 13 years old, crash land on an island, no adults on the island, and things go from bad to worse for the kids. And, but one of the interesting ironies of the story is that the kids keep saying, I wish there were a grown-up here. I wish there were adults here. I can't wait to get back to the adult world, because to a kid, adults have it together. And to a kid, adults are able to conduct themselves like adults. But the irony in the book is that there's a world war going on in the adult world. It's like the adults aren't any better off. And so that when they're rescued from the island, they're rescued to what? To a world of chaos. And it's a very dark story. So I don't want to get that dark, but kind of the same idea of there's no manual that comes with being an adult. And we joke to our kids that you get the dad book when your first kid is born. And but you kind of have to figure it out as you go. And if you're not careful, then you can continue to grow older and older and not necessarily accumulate or act upon the wisdom that you've accumulated.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being a kid and always wanting to grow up so I can be an adult, thinking that it was way better than being a kid. And so I think that's just funny that, we grow up kind of rushing to get to that point, and then when we get to this point, we're like, oh, this isn't as easy as we thought it was.
Yeah. Well, I love being an adult. You can eat ice cream whenever you want.
You can, but should you?
Well, maybe that'll come up in one of our rules here. Okay, so Rosanna and I have each come up with 6 rules that we've learned. We were going to do 5.
Which is funny because he said come up with 5, and then I made my list and it had 6, and then he made his list and it had 6.
So you're going to get 12 rules here, people. So it's like a bonus for our listeners.
There you go.
That Rosanna will share first, and then we'll discuss that. But we're also going to rate ourselves as we go on a scale of 1 to 10 for how well we feel like we're actually following our own advice, in a sense. So you ready to kick it off?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. The 12 Rules for Living Well by Jordan and Rosanna.
And I don't know that they're, well, even some of mine are like rules, like you should do this, but others are just like mantras or ideas or...
Like, yeah, mentalities.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so number 1 for me is good things don't come easy. And I feel like there's a misnomer that if you have a good family, it's easy. If you have a good marriage, it's easy. If you love your job, work is easy. That it's easy to be someone's, this or that. And so I think just the more that I go along in life, I've realized it's not always easy. It's not always easy to prioritize your health. It's not always easy starting and running your own business, but although it's not always easy, it's definitely worth it. So it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take planning and prep. You're going to be tired. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be overworked, but that doesn't mean it's not beautiful and it's not good. And so, I think like hard work comes hand in hand with anything. And it's not just a series of people handing you things to get to the good. Yeah. Like there's going to be struggle amongst it. And, sometimes it's going to be great and sometimes it's not going to be. But when you look back, you kind of realize that in those times is kind of when you're kind of becoming and building those things that you really want. And it's not just, the end point. It's part of the journey to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's said often. You can look at anyone's highlight and then they'll show you the hours and hours and hours and hours of work and preparation behind the scenes to get to that highlight that you don't normally see. And I think that's true. Like I think of like career success, but I think that's true like in a good relationship. Like show me a good relationship and then you can peel that back a little bit and you see the hours and hours and hours of work that it takes, whether it's spending quality time together, working on communication, or kind of establishing expectations and boundaries, and a lot of the other things we've talked about on the show. And you can fill in any domain that it takes work to get there.
Yeah, and so when you and I are, talking about our next steps, regardless if it's, business or personal, or with health or with family, like when we make a decision, there's always like that point where we kind of like nod in agreement in whatever it is. And then the kind of like that kind of deep like breath blowout, knowing, okay, like this is what we've decided, and knowing as an adult, like, okay, it's not going to be given to us and it's not going to be easy, but if we're in it together and we're willing to work, it will be good.
Yeah. So many things to build off of that. I think my first rule will build off of that a little bit. But first, rate yourself on how well you embody that.
You know what? I would say like a 7. Like most of the time I'm aware.
I'd give you an 8 or 9 on it, at least.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'd give myself a 7.
Like I know that they don't come easy, and I'm willing to push through. So, sometimes I'm a little more pessimistic than I need to be, but I think that's why I have room to grow.
Okay. All right. Rule number 1, good things don't come easy. All right. Here is, I guess I'll call this rule number 2.
Sure.
Coming from me. This goes along with that. I think it'll look at it from a slightly different angle, but that is to take responsibility. And this is one thing I've learned and try to remind myself often as an adult, is that there's like 2 ways to look at it. Life happens, and then you can move your mind in one direction to assess what has happened, look at what you have control over, take steps to understand that, and to exert control to create the outcome that you really would like. Or you can kind of fall the other way and look at it as luck or victimhood or chance or whatever the case may be. But I'm reading, the book I'm reading right now is called The One Thing by Gary Keller. And he gets into just people who are successful are always not looking at how things are happenstance, but how they can exert personal responsibility over this. We talked about this. I read Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets, and an expert poker player talks about making decisions, and she's like, there's nothing about poker that's left to chance. It's all understanding that. Same thing with, we haven't talked about Jocko as much as I'd like to on the show, but he wrote Extreme Ownership, which is basically that. At a certain point in your adulthood, you have to take responsibility for everything that you have going on in your life. And there's another book that I read where the main character kind of arrives at the conclusion that you can't blame your parents for anything once you're past 25 years of age, because at that point you're an adult, and then you can do whatever you want with your life. And I always, that kind of, I don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of stuck with me. So that's how I would explain that one. Take responsibility. Life is hard. Accept those hardships, but don't roll over to them. That's a chance to understand, that you can be proactive, and if you want something, then you have to make it happen. If something or a series of negative somethings happen, that's also on you. And to what extent can you change that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. When you're a kid, right, and there's something that happens, right? We as children don't want to take responsibility. Did you spill the milk all over the table? I didn't do that, right? It's we default to not wanting to take responsibility for our actions because we think we're going to get in trouble or disappoint people. But at some point there's that sense of ownership where it's yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. Let me acknowledge that. And I think I did that to you yesterday. I responded to you not in a great way. And you walked away, and right away I knew you know what? I probably shouldn't have responded like that. It was, that was my fault.
It's very mature of you. I appreciate that.
Right. But right away I was you know what? I need to tell him that's on me. I'm going to own that, and I'm going to apologize for that. But you have to get to a place where you can own that mistake.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be hiding. Mm-hmm. And I think for so long, I mean, even when you're a young adult, right, you're just, you want to hide from those mistakes instead of kind of facing them.
Or I think often making excuses as well. Here's, and you could look at any domain of your life, and once I think you reach a certain age, for the most part, of course there's exceptions, but for the most part, the quality of your relationships and finances and personal health and career has been determined by you. Taking responsibility for where it stands and for where you would like to see all of those things down the road.
So how do you think you do in terms of...
I'm a 5.
You're a 5?
I wish it was higher, but this is me taking responsibility for my life. I think there are many things that I'm good at taking responsibility for, but it's a work. I make a lot of excuses too, so I need to continue to reinforce this to myself.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't know. I think I'm probably better than a 5. I'd maybe a 7. I don't know if you would agree or not agree. I feel when I misstep,
It's just the Rosanna rates herself 7 on everything show.
That's not nice.
That was not. I apologize. Okay. All right, moving on. Number 3.
So I think I'm going to I have 6, but this is out of order, but because we were just talking about responsibility, I think this one pairs nicely. So the next one I'll do is don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's so cliche. Of course, everyone says mistakes are necessary. They're inevitable. But I feel for a very long time, I've spent so much time hoping I didn't make any, or hoping that if I did, nobody would notice. I think that stems from this notion of feeling like I need to be perfect, like I need to have all the answers, or that I'm everything that you think I should be. And now, even when I do make a mistake, I can sit back. I think this is why it couples back with responsibility. It's okay, this is what happened. This is what I did. Just being able to kind of process that and be the next time I would, do it differently. So I think part of it is like having that responsibility, owning it, acknowledging it, and just being like, yeah, I made a mistake, and kind of learning from it and moving on with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important too. That does go along with what we were saying. I feel the same way. There's a lot of things that we like will try to hide or cover up. But like mistakes, you get to a certain point, you're like, I shouldn't cover that up. You know what I think goes along with this too is I realize that not a lot of people are paying attention to you. Like overall, like we're worried about what other people think.
Correct.
But
And really
then
it's
at a certain point, like, no one's really thinking about you.
correct. Well, and I think we were talking about that once where it's like everybody thinks that everyone is paying attention to them when in reality nobody's paying attention to them because they're too busy with themselves.
Oh, that was my uncle's advice because he's, I don't know, in his 70s. And he said, when you're young, you think you care a lot what other people think. When you get older, you stop caring what other people think. And then when you get really old, you realize no one's been thinking about you at all.
Which is kind of something to consider when we talk about like responsibility and mistakes where, you know, we can't be afraid. And I think part of it is acknowledging the mistakes and learning from them.
Yeah.
So if I were to rate myself on that, I would probably give myself a 5 because I think oftentimes I do live in this little like fear bubble because I don't want my mistakes to be
Recognized, acknowledged,
right. I don't
called out.
Well, I don't want anyone to see them because I still operate under that idea that like people need me to be perfect or people have portrayed me a certain way so that, you know, like I can't do this or I can't say that or I can't be honest. And so I think instead of living out of fear, like I just need to do my very best. And when I make a mistake, just kind of own up to it, learn from it, and do better.
I too have one that syncs nicely with that.
Oh,
Look at us.
What were you going to rate yourself with?
Oh, I got to rate
Don't
myself.
be afraid to make mistakes.
I'd say 6, maybe higher. Just because I'm used to making a lot of mistakes. So now I'm less afraid of doing it because I know I'm going to anyway.
Oh, I don't know that I would think that you would acknowledge that you make mistakes. All right. Interesting.
Daily.
Continue. I hope that mistake isn't me.
No.
Oh, good.
No. Okay. What's my this is number 4. All right, so I'm going to go slightly out of order as well because this pairs nicely with what we were saying. And that is that all right, so the actual rule that I'm going to say here is this. I wrote down this rule for myself. It's put yourself in the stream. So let me explain this and then how talking about mistakes reminded me of this. So one rule I've learned is that there's no army of one. Like no one who has achieved a degree of success in any portion of their life has done it alone. And so putting myself in the stream means that I picture, metaphorically like a stream of thoughts, a stream of ideas, a stream of culture, the stream of humanity. And the closer we are to it, or jumping into the water, kind of puts us into the conversations, into the wisdom, into the network of other human experiences. And so once we're connected to those other thoughts and ideas and people that are flowing past us, then that's a chance for us to grow. And I think that, in my mind, deserves its own podcast conversation too about ways that we've done it or would like to do it. But the reason why we need to do that is because I think about making mistakes, but then I also included with this description just having what I call the white belt mentality about ourselves. This is the
no doubt from your jiu-jitsu experience.
Is the first jiu-jitsu reference in this episode, but there was a black belt who was talking about his experience, and he says true learning begins when you get your black belt. Right? It's not mastery, but that's when true learning begins. Everything else is just the fundamentals. One of the founders of judo was buried in his white belt. And I was just reading about this morning, kind of because this idea of being unfinished, this idea of continual growth, this idea that we're never done. We never have to accept ourselves as we are today. We're not fixed. And then the way to continue to grow is to just be open-minded to others and to put ourselves in the way of the thoughts and ideas that are out there, whether it's through books, invigorating podcast conversations like this one, or just like the relationships that we have with close friends all the way down to strangers.
Okay. Well, I like that. So, like, when you're at jiu-jitsu, I know you've told me this story, you always go up against guys who have more experience than you, or that are bigger than you, or that are stronger than you, because you're looking to learn. And so you're not pairing yourself with someone who's a wipeout who knows less than you, because you always tell me, like, well, what are the chances I'm going to learn something from someone who knows less than me? I'm going to often learn from people who know more than me.
Yeah.
You often get hurt from those people, but you often also learn from those people.
That's right. Lessons and pain. But I think that goes along with mistakes too, right? Just not being afraid to fail, but recognizing that every failure, every mistake is really a learning opportunity, if I want to go cliche. But how do those learning opportunities happen? How does that growth happen? It's by putting yourself in the stream. All right, so we're a third of a way through our rules.
Okay.
So number 1 is good things don't come easy. 2 is take responsibility. 3 was don't be afraid to make mistakes. And 4, put yourself in the stream. How would you rate yourself in terms of how well you put yourself in the stream?
2.
No, come on.
Yeah,
No,
I really do.
No, you hired a business coach this year? I mean, I thought that was incredible.
Right, so I'm up from 0 to 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, right, because that's not my default. Again, out of that fear of making mistakes or people not seeing me as perfect or finished, sometimes I just hold myself back, or I don't grow as fast as I could because I'm uncomfortable with the notion of doing that. Even within my business, like I could be part of wedding vendor organizations where we meet monthly and do socials and whatever. I've been trying to get myself to go to that. Actually, the first one I was supposed to go to, you know when it happened? The week that COVID hit and everything shut down. That was like the first one I was supposed to go to. After that, I never went. Clearly, it was like shut down for like a year and a half. But even my business coach is like, you should go to those. I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it's uncomfortable for me. I would say that I'm an introvert, even though people laugh. My business coach actually laughed when I told her that. I'm like, that's not a comfortable situation for me, and I'm a little more reluctant. So I think that's why a 2 is an accurate rating.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you like built it up in your head to go to that meeting, and then once it didn't happen, it just deflated all of that hype and anticipation.
Well, no, I didn't want to go, but I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go. And then COVID happened. I was like, it's a sign. You don't need to go.
Yeah.
You're fine.
You know, I have a bit of an aside here. I don't know if I ever told you this story. It comes from freshman year in high school, before you and I were an item.
Ooh.
But there was a girl who I sat near, and I had like a freshman crush on. And in my mind, I built up like the specific day that I was going to ask her to a movie, probably.
I was going to ask her to borrow her pencil.
Yeah. And then it was just like one specific day in my head that I had picked, do or die. But she didn't show up on that day, so I never asked her since then. But the moral of the story is that ended up being a good thing, because then I met you a few months later.
Okay. Interesting.
I think there's a moral in that somewhere. Okay, anyway, moving on. Number 5. What's your number 5?
Number 5, do the damn thing. Take a chance, a risk, go out on a limb. Like, what do you have to lose?
Wait, I think that's interesting how you said that you were afraid to go to that, and it's been 2 years, and then your next piece of advice was to just do it.
Again, take a chance, a risk, go out on a limb. What do you have to lose? And I think that's one thing you've taught me over the last 10 years is like, all right, and we've talked about this before. What's the worst case scenario? If I do this, what's the worst that can possibly happen? Because in our minds, we kind of talk ourselves out of things. There's that self-doubt. There's that fear, shame, like whatever it is. But like I think these questions kind of help. How do you find out what you actually want in life? Lean into what you think you want and take action towards it. Action breeds more clarity than thought ever will. Because you could spin around and circle in your head over and over again. And even the thoughts in your head can convince you not to do the thing. So sometimes you just need to do it. So whatever that is, like take a chance, take a risk, take a class, ask someone to go to coffee. There are things I've done like that, that multiple times I've wanted to say no to, or I have said no to. And then I'm just like, you know what? Okay, sure. Mm-hmm. And even now, like, asking someone to go to lunch and then like connecting over business, or someone like saying that they want to, come talk to me about something. It's like things that I don't necessarily feel completely comfortable doing, but then doing anyways.
Yeah.
And that's been the same, whether it's been like in health and wellness or with things with our family. It's like, all right, let's just try it. Because until you try it, maybe you're not really sure if it's for you.
Yeah. I wrote down, like in your notes, I see you wrote the phrase, action breeds more clarity than thought. Hashtag. Quotable quote.
Hashtag adulting.
Right. But I think that's true. And my default is to think and overthink things sometimes. But I get to a point, I was very bookish, like just as an English major, and I loved reading. And at a certain point, it hit me like, well, what's the point of knowing all this if I don't do anything with it in life? And I felt very convicted by that thought process. And so, I think the first precursor to that is just thinking of the thing that needs doing. And sometimes even that can be hard because we're not sure if that's the right thing, or what if we make a mistake, or what if we're missing out on something else. And so there's a lot of fear that goes into that. But I think once we identify even just something, we may never even know if it's the right thing, but it's like taking action. And then you gain, right, there's two kinds of knowledge, the book knowledge and the experiential knowledge. So gaining that and leading into the experiential knowledge.
Well, and maybe it's not the right thing, but maybe it's just the right now thing or the next thing until you find the one thing.
You won't know until you try, in many cases. All right, so how would you rate yourself on that?
I'd go 6.
I think 6 is a safe number.
Right,
I'd go 6 as well, yeah.
Getting better. Still haven't gone to the thing that I said I would go to, but I'm doing other things that sometimes scare me, trying to figure out next steps. And you're good because, try it.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose?
I think the challenge with that is, like I said, like thinking of thinking big enough to arrive at something that scares you to not want to do it.
Yes, because often when you're scared of the thing, that means it's time to go try it.
Yeah. Okay. Number
Wait,
6.
how would you rate yourself on
6? No, I'd rate myself
Okay.
6. Number 6. I wrote down this rule. My rule is this: to reflect and treat yourself like your own best friend.
I feel like that's interesting coming from you.
I'm not going to rate myself very highly on this, just so you know. But like, if we sit down and as we like prepare for the show, we're like, all right, what rules do we know just work as an adult? Well, like reflection and like treating yourself like a friend. So I thought specifically of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I'm sure that jumped to everybody's mind, but you should really read it. It's a slender volume.
I'm smiling at you with my eyes.
Yeah.
Started with Lord of the Flies, which maybe 50%
I know I've
of
name
people
dropped
got.
like several, but this is you're listening to a podcast with me in it. You're going to get my thoughts.
All right, go ahead.
So the reason why this is interesting is because like he wrote these meditations not as advice to other people. And if you read it, it reads like it's advice to other people. But he never intended it for publication. It's just like personal journal reflections to himself. A lot of it was about like waking up, and he's not a morning person. It turns out Marcus Aurelius, not a morning person. So he actually like wrote reflections, like trying to coach himself to get up in the morning, be proactive with his mornings, just as an example. And there are other more noble things included in that as well. But he's literally talking to himself like he's his own life coach. And I think that there's a strength in that. Is that something that I regularly do? No. Is this something that I know works and I wish I did more often and should do more often? Yes. So I'd give myself a 2.
All right, read what the rule is again.
Reflect and treat yourself like your own best friend.
Ooh, that's hard. Maybe 4. I'd go 4 on that. I think I do a lot of reflecting. I don't think I am as kind to myself as my friends are to me.
Yeah. And I really, and folks should go listen to our conversation with Trish Blackwell because she gets into this specifically. So it's just a great concept, right? When a friend has a problem, you talk to them with love and with consideration. And when you have a problem, you talk to yourself. We put ourselves down often.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Rule number 7.
Number 7. So for me, it would be just be yourself, no matter who that is. I think it has to do a little bit with responsibility and ownership. Just knowing who you are, just knowing what you're good at, just knowing what your preferences are, and being okay with that. And I think I've seen this more, as like I'm a parent, like when we talk to our kids about, what, one kid said to another, what one kid said about them. And just the things that I remind our kids about themselves, about like who they are, like about their character and about what they're talented in. And it's not always the same as certain ways that their friends are talented. Mm-hmm. And I always the conversation always comes back to, you don't have to be just like that person, or you don't have to be good at this. Like, you're good at these things and those people are not. So it's not this game of comparison. It's not, I feel like I spent so many years of my life wishing I was more like someone else, whether I looked like someone else or acted like someone else or had what somebody else had. So, as I transitioned to 40 this year and kind of even just looking ahead as the rest of my adulthood, I want to be comfortable with who I am. I want to love who I am. And I don't really care what that means when I put myself up against someone. I'm done doing that.
Yeah. Now, I know this isn't how you meant it, but this is what comes to my mind when someone says just be yourself is, well, what if myself is a jerk or a grump? Or what if my true nature is just a video game addict?
I don't even know how to respond. Hopefully, if you're an adult, that's not you.
Right. So I always think about when we say that, we always think about just be ourselves. I think it's just lose or stop playing the comparison game. But actually going back a little bit, in one of my notes I didn't say is alongside a white belt mentality was that imitation is not suicide. Because there's that famous quote, imitation. If you try to be like someone else, then that's in a sense like committing suicide to your true self. And I think I actually put a lot of value on imitation, not comparison necessarily, but on looking at other people's positive qualities and then aspiring to be like those.
Well, aspiring to attain similar qualities, but not aspiring to replicate yourself into that person.
I don't want to be them, like in a bad Lifetime movie. But I do want to, if someone has a degree of kindness or wit or just any positive habit that is working well, then, I'm still trying to adopt that into my life. But I think, either comparing ourselves in a sense that puts ourselves down or worrying about what other people think about us are the things that can be negative. So when I overthink that rule, those are some of the things that come to my mind.
Well, it just that kind of throws a little wrench in the way that I worded it. But I'm thinking about yesterday we took the kids bowling, and there were these 4 people bowling right next to us, and they were bowlers. They had a special kind of bag that had a thing that you pulled, and they had special shoes. Mm-hmm. And the one girl had a tattoo of a bowling pin on her ankle. Mm-hmm. She likes to bowl. Bowling, she had a certain wrist guard. She was bowling strikes. Mm-hmm. Good for her, right?
We didn't care. Yeah, it was
that's her cool, thing, right? And that's part of who she is. And although that seems foreign to me, oh wow, you're good at just being comfortable with what your skills are, what your talents are, what you like. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm sure, we're not bowlers, but there are plenty of people who love bowling and follow yeah, do you, right? And I don't think it's weird, and I'm not putting her down, but the same thing in your life, what's important to you, what's special to you, what makes you unique. Mm-hmm. What do people, praise you for? It's not going to be what it is for everybody else. And so follow those passions, follow those inclinations, follow those talents. It's nothing to hide behind,
All right, so where do you fall with that?
Oh, probably a 5. I feel I've been growing.
No, you
into
are
that.
the most yourself.
I think I'm the most myself I've been.
I would give you a 9 on that. Oh. There's no one like you.
Wow. Well, thanks. That's high praise. I appreciate that.
I mean, not a 10, but
we're working on it.
Yeah.
I still got about 60 more years to refine it.
Yeah. So you're a 9, I've declared.
Okay. What about you?
I'd say a 6.
False. You're also like a 9, 10. You are
Well,
you
I
you
spent
are
so much time, maybe critiquing myself, and in a sense, like I'd say, like look, wishing that there were certain qualities of mine that I take responsibility for that I can change and improve, but like wishing that those were different or those were improved.
I feel like you're just like innately you, and you've always kind of marched to a beat that was just slightly different, and like there are curiosities and things that are uniquely
Part of
you.
my charm. You never know what's going to be behind the next
and
Jordan
you
corner.
don't really apologize for how you are, and it's like, nope, this is how I am, and this is how it is, and if you like it, you like it, and if you don't, well, you married me, so this is what you get. Like there's
Well, you are stuck with me.
right. So there is that about you, and I don't think that you really ever try and be something that someone else wants you to be. Like you're very clearly you. Even sometimes when I want to change you, you're not.
I let you think you are for a little while. And I don't want to be anything
Okay, enough.
other than what I've been trying to be lately.
So I think you're a 9. I think you're yourself, no matter what that is.
All right. Well, thank you. That was 7. Number 8 coming at you. Oh boy, a couple good ones here. I will go to number 8. Things won't make you happy. Just life rule right there. Things, objects, very unlikely to make us happy.
Yes, you're a 10. You don't. I'm not even gonna wait for you to rate yourself.
I didn't rate myself on that. I like things. Now, I do think there's a minimum number of things that we want or even that we need to kind of not make it a stressor anymore. Like, I mean, you need the basic essentials. You need food and you need housing and whatnot. But I'm even just thinking about, like, if we had the 6 of us in a much smaller space, I think that would be a stressor for us. And while a bigger space wouldn't make us happy, it would alleviate some of the stress of being on top of each other, especially like during quarantine. So I do think, like, to a certain regard, there are some stressors that can be alleviated if you have the right things. But like, I thinking about our conversation with Neuro Feliciano, and her book, like, this book won't make you happy, right? It talks about being more content with what you have rather than trying to seek more. And so I think, like, really this just goes along with her wisdom, which was finding contentment in what you have. And then I look at the life that we have, and this has been a big mantra on the show, right? Of just like, of going back to our first episode, these are the days, appreciating the little things, and like really soaking in the richness of the moments that we have, of the relationships that we share, rather than wishing we had a thing that we could buy or own that would give us a very elusive idea of happiness.
Okay. I mean, I agree that, like, things won't make you happier. I mean, I even remember this as being a kid. Like, you ever, like, ask for something for Christmas or your birthday, like, months in advance, and you anticipate it for forever, and then you get it, and then while you're excited that you got it, like, yeah, you're not really you're excited that you have it and you like it, but, like, okay, and then that's it. Like, you still have to, like, live the rest of your life. You still have, like, and so I think oftentimes we think those things are going to make us happier, and they often don't. Mm-hmm. And so, but I see that with a lot of things, like even right now, like considering my business for next year, like I'm going back and forth about, like, if I book, how many weddings can I book? If I book 10 more, will like I'm trying to, like, you have to assess, like, is this going to make me happier? Is this going to cause me more stress? Like, you really have to, like, get to the root of, why do I want this? Do I want this new car because it's shiny and pretty, or do I need this new car because my other one is old? Like, there's like that back and forth. And I think
a lot of that
sometimes
comes back to, like, what other people think of us too. I want to buy these brands or have this car. And in my mind, I don't know if this is typical, but in my mind, like, I want people to think of me a certain way. But when you really break it down, it's like, like, my friends aren't going to think of me any differently, and I don't really care what strangers think. So why am I so worried about this?
Right. So, I mean, I think it's that good reminder, but then it's also kind of like that, what conversation are you having about the things that you want and why you want them?
Yeah. So things won't make you happy. For me, I'd give myself a higher rating on this because it's nothing I've done But I think, like, that there's, in most cases, I'm just, like, I'm not interested in things.
No things, no stuff.
Yeah. I mean, some things and stuff, but not a lot. So I'd say 7. I still want the things and stuff.
I don't think you do.
I'm also too cheap to buy them.
I was gonna say, yeah, you're minimalist. And I mean, it's not something I have never said in front of you. People know, like, you're cheap, kind of to a fault, in a lot of ways, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think I care a little bit more about, like, what kind of car I drive, or what it looks like. You have kept me humble in that regard. I think I would, if I was with someone else, or, like, I would probably have, different options, but you keep me humble.
I guess if I were to make this rule longer, right? Things won't make you happy, but, like, focus on things is too broad of a word, right? Because there are other things.
I mean, flowers make me happy when you give me flowers.
Yeah, gestures and certain time. So yeah, I guess, like, having a more sophisticated understanding of what happiness and contentment are and how to achieve them.
Okay. Oh, you want me to rate myself?
Yes, you were.
I'm probably like a 5.
Okay.
I know that they don't make me happy, but I like things.
Oh,
and I like
really
stuff.
Human.
I also like to buy them.
Okay. Number 9.
All right, number 9. It's okay to say no. I didn't really know that until I was about, like, 37 or 38, that I could just say no. People, to basically everything. People often come to me and ask me for things and stuff, whether it's, like, time, help, guidance. I don't even know what. Like, they need someone to cry to, like, all of it. Like, just doesn't matter. Someone needs to watch their kids for that. Like, people always, my door was always open. People always came. And I think that's just a natural inclination for me, is to, like, be people's person. But that can also be very taxing and tiring. And so now I do get better at, like, when I do not have the room to handle one more thing or one more request, or I don't feel guilty about not signing up to be the room mom at the party. Like, I can say no. Like, I can look at my plates and I know when it's too full, and I know when to say no. I didn't think I could do that.
I have one more question to add on to this for you. And for all of us. What about saying no to yourself?
In what way?
When you think of the next thing that you feel like you want to, or you feel like you have to do, is there a way to say no to yourself, to give yourself a boundary to focus on what actually needs attention, or what you actually need in the moment?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're saying no to yourself where you're like, I need to cook dinner tonight, and I need to wash the rest of the laundry and fold it and put it all away. Like, you'd be like, nope, I can't do that today. And there are times when, like, would you just push past it and try and get it all done? I'm like, nope, I'm just done. Mm-hmm. So I think, boundaries are a beautiful thing. So you can say no to others. You can say no to yourself. Like, you kind of have to protect yourself. You have to protect your time, and you have to know your limits. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I did not do that, or know how to do that, or know that I could or should do that.
Yeah. So that would probably be a great podcast episode by itself. It's just talking about boundaries.
Yeah, I mean,
and just explore that concept together.
Yeah. So I would say I'm like, I don't know.
A lot of these we've gotten better at over time, too. Like, even
Correct.
5 years ago, we'd probably rank ourselves lower.
But these are things I feel like I've really put into practice, or really have been paying attention to over the last 5 years. So I would say saying no. It's still hard for me to say no. Like, there's really, like, some kind of, like, struggle and strife.
You're a people pleaser. Yeah. I
am a people pleaser, and I feel like if I let somebody down, then it, again, reflects poorly on me, and, how will they think of me? So while it's a hard thing to do, I feel like I'm getting better at it. So maybe a 6.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking, like, both of us, like, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten better at it. Okay. Number 10. Are we at 10 already? Yeah.
10.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Number 10. I wrote down just about habits. Basic habits and mindsets lead to big habits and outcomes. And so what's a basic habit? I just think like cleanliness. There's actually a book that's titled "Make Your Bed." I think it's written by a former general or an ex-Marine, so someone with a military background. But they talk about just like the fundamentals of daily living. And if you cover those things, if you wake up and if you make your bed, and if you like have a routine, if you hang up your shirts, if you like a lot of the things that seem mundane, those are actually important because you're giving yourself a really firm foundation upon which you can develop other bigger and more successful habits. And then that leads to bigger outcomes. Someone else has, I've heard people talk about like having your own life, having your own house in order. And basically meaning everything you're responsible for, you have habits in place to be responsible for them. This is how we don't overspend money. This is the habits we have to make sure we're eating healthfully. These are the habits related to our relationships or our children. And we don't often think of all those things as habits, but what are the things that we're regularly doing to give ourselves a foundation upon which we can build some bigger things, whether with our career or other aspects of our life. So that's the way I would summarize it. Basic habits and mindsets lead to big habits and outcomes. That's the rule. And I would rate myself, with you in my life, I think my habits are far more improved than if I were left to my own devices. So I'd give myself a 7.
Okay.
Like I think the 8, 9, and to rate myself an 8, 9, 10, I think would be like, I just feel like there are so many more dynamic habits that I can continue to learn and grow into. But I think like you and I have a good life in part because we have a lot of just fundamentals to our day-to-day living that
established habits
that
and
we don't have to
routine
think about.
that allow us to operate at a higher level. I don't know what I would rate myself. What would you rate me? I had an idea, and then you're like, You kept talking, and I was like, I don't know. Maybe not. I was going to say 8.
Yeah, I'd put you at 8.
Probably because, for better or worse, I operate as like a very well-oiled machine. I do things in a certain order, in a certain way, and I'm always worried about like efficiency and how much I can get done and, complaining about all the people who interfere with that when they stand in the middle of the kitchen. So I feel like I'm a little bit, because of my type A personality, I'd probably say like I'm probably at an 8.
Okay.
But you're like, I don't know, people who are 8, 9, or 10 are probably, I'm like, but you know what? I am a little bit more.
Oh, for sure.
Than you. A little more.
More than me, more than most people that I've ever met.
Okay.
So at least an 8. Okay, number 11. This is your, Rosanna's last contribution to the list.
Yeah, so I made the 5 and I was like, you know what? I feel like there's one more. And for me, it was gratitude. And so, I just jotted down this notes. It's so easy to focus on the next thing or a material thing, right? Like your next car or your next home remodeling project. But at the end of the day, we have all we need and then some. So like, are we content with what we have, or are we trying to find happiness in the next shiny thing? So like, how often do you sit down and how often are you thankful for what you do have? On last week's episode, I talked about how my morning routine and my workout routine have really fallen by the wayside in the last like 6 to 8 weeks, and how I kind of felt like a little lost in all of that by not doing that. And part of that morning routine was that 5-minute gratitude journal.
Yeah.
So that's been missing from my routine.
I saw that this morning.
In a while. And so that a few days ago started making its appearance again. I was like, you know what? I feel like to get my head right and to really kind of just like really understand what's important and really focus on what's important, I think I need to get back to that.
Yeah.
And, you could make fun of me if you want, but it's like, nope, I think a lot of having your head on straight and knowing where you're going comes from taking that stock and that inventory and really thinking about and settling into gratitude.
Yeah. And that's similar to like we were like talking about happiness and contentment. And so gratitude is really kind of at the core of being able to enjoy those. I do feel like I'm generally a grateful person, but I don't think about it that often at the same time. Like I can't tell you the last time I had grateful thoughts beyond like thanking you for doing something.
Right. So maybe that's a good something
like,
for
thanks
you
for making
to like
dinner. Yeah. Thanks.
Well,
for...
no. I don't like, thanks, Mom. You washed my underwear. Like you're grateful, but like
that's polite.
That's polite. Correct.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm glad you did that because I didn't have to do it. But how often do you sit down and like, for me, it's you have to write 3 things you're grateful for every day. Now you could write the same 3 things, but literally I sit there until like something that is like, I really kind of think about yesterday, or I think about the day ahead, and I really kind of sit there and search for like the meaning in some of that and what I'm grateful for. So maybe that's like a good, what's the word? Not test, but something for you to work, like to try.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're
because like I said, like I
no.
don't feel ungrateful for things, but I don't work at it either. It's so okay. All right, so that's your last rule for life. Mine is my last rule, number 12, ladies and gentlemen. Be honest. Having good moral character is important. But I think so. When I was thinking about this, like this intersects with a few things we talked about. Like you talked about making mistakes and how sometimes we hide that, so we're not necessarily being honest with others about a shortcoming of ours. But I was also thinking about this with myself too, where maybe I can, I'm not a liar, but I think when I'm when I think of myself, let me put it this way: sometimes I'm not honest with myself. You know what I mean? Where like
Tell me more.
Well, like something happens, and we're not honest with ourselves about why that happened. We don't want to even if we sense a truth, we don't want to acknowledge that to ourselves.
Like it's easier to blame the circumstance or the person than it is to like be like, well, actually, you didn't communicate your expectation, and that's on you. That's not on them for not knowing.
Exactly. So this goes with my first thing, along with like taking responsibility. So I think like just living a life of integrity means like never. I heard someone say this, that their goal was to never tell a lie and to never put themselves in a position where they would want to tell a lie. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I've adopted that, but I think like the next step is it's almost easier to be honest to others. Someone asks something or wants to know something, or you can tell them something, you can admit something to someone else. But the real work is also with yourself as well. So that is my number 12 rule for life.
Being honest with yourself.
Being honest.
Being honest
to others and to yourself.
Okay. How do you feel like you do with that?
I don't know. It's hard. Like, being honest, it would be, I don't know. I'd say like in the 5 range.
I was going to say,
probably.
I'd give myself a 5 because I can be honest with myself, but it's hard for me sometimes to be honest with others.
I don't know. I feel like you're just pretty forthcoming.
Well,
I never have to wonder what you're thinking.
You never have to wonder what I'm thinking to you, but when I do feel that tension, like I won't tell the other person, where it's like I agonize over it. So like this is how I honestly feel, but I kind of bend.
Yeah. I feel like I'm because even if I know something to be true, I would prefer not to acknowledge that, not to admit that to myself.
Okay.
I'm not doing anything interesting enough worth lying about either. I can't think of anything like. I think it would just be mistakes. Like, did you fart? Like, no, it was the dog. That might be the last thing I
You
told.
don't fart, so it's not that.
Okay. Wow, boy, we got that. That was real personal right there.
What, you're farting?
We're just just talk about that on the air.
Airing out your dirty laundry.
Oh, gee. Okay.
Okay, so
ladies and gentlemen, all right. So those are our 12 rules. Should we recap our 12 real quick?
No, but here's a short list of runners up for me. I think
the consolation prize
yes,
rules.
Take care of your health, and I mean that in terms of physical, emotional, social health. I think that's all important, and you really have to take care of yourself because no one's going to do it for you. The second one too is eat the damn cake. Even if you're taking care of your health. Even if you are walking the straight and narrow,
life is too short.
Life is too short to not eat the cake, or not to enjoy, or not to go out with a friend, or right. Like we talk ourselves out of so much, but life is meant to be lived, and so obviously not to excess and not in Vegas all the time. But we can have a foundation and a beautiful life and follow all the rules, but like you got to live a little.
That's what Benjamin Franklin said about eating and about alcohol. He said, drink not to elevation, eat not to dullness.
Okay. Enjoy what you eat.
Yeah.
It's normal to feel lost. I I felt like that a little bit at times, and I feel like it happens when you're growing into the next thing or out of an old thing. And so if you are in your 30s or in your 40s and at times you feel lost, probably means that there's something new for you, or you're growing out of something else. And so I think it's good to pay attention to something like that. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It just means that there's a next step. And probably the last one is to slow down. In a generation of instant gratification and Amazon Prime, we live life a little too fast. So, just being mindful and being here now instead of being 10 steps ahead or dwelling in the past or in the future. Like where are we today? And are we just taking it in?
Mm-hmm. When will then be now? Soon. All right, that's good. I didn't come up with any runners up, but there's dozens of just like practical, pieces of wisdom that we accrue. And this is a good exercise for me because my original list, I think I had probably 10 or 12 on my own. So then to sort those out, come up with the ones I want to talk about the most. And I ended up merging a lot of them together. But it's a good exercise for anyone to do. Just sit down and ask yourself, like, what does it mean to live life well? Like, can I answer that question? We all can. If you can't, then what the hell have you been doing so far? It might be time to start
to reassess, right?
Gaining some wisdom. But we all have a degree of wisdom and experience. So to what degree do we follow it? I thought it was interesting that you and I didn't come close to giving ourselves 10s on anything. But that's the goal, right? Isn't that interesting? Like, we know how to live. To what extent are we actually following the wisdom that we know? Well, we're kind of average.
But you know what? Well, we're also A, hard on ourselves, and B, idealists, so that doesn't help. I think other people might rate us differently, just like we might rate other people's, how they do differently because of like what they see or what they know. I think part of it is, the show is called The Relentless Pursuit. We are relentlessly trying to pursue more and to be better. We had a couple categories where we were a little higher. But even though we know how we should live or we're told how to live, like, we're doing this all for the first time. We're parenting for the first time. We're married, right? And doing this marriage thing for the first time. Like, it's not like we've done this before. And so we're human and there's error and we do make mistakes and we mess it up. But I think it's in that we learn what's important. And I think that's why we're able to like come up with this list. It's like, there's a lot of things that aren't important, right? Yeah. But there's a lot there that like, now that we know, and it's not that like, what's the, like, once you know, if you don't know, that's fool me once, shame on me. It's like, I don't know. Basically, like, you can know something, but it's not till like you experience it or go through it like that, like, what's taught is learned. And so it's like, now it's like we have this knowledge, like we have gone through life with some experience, and now moving forward we have like the rest of our life to like really like get it right.
Yeah And I think that's the challenge. And but just like keeping this in within our sights, within the forefront of how we think and how we go about life. I think true wisdom, I've heard it said, true wisdom is taking your own advice. So we just have like 12 pieces of...
See, that's exactly what I was trying to say when I messed it up earlier.
Oh, that's where you're going with that?
Something like that.
So, so we just gave ourselves at least 12 nuggets that can help us continue to live well. And I'm sure there's dozens of others. So we'd love for all of you to tell us which ones you connected with. What else would you add to this list? I'm really curious about. And we're looking forward to connecting over some more of that. I want to be in the stream of wisdom. So what else is out there?
Yeah. If you haven't already, go over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Share this episode or any of the others with your friends. Post to social media and share the love.
That's right. You know the drill. We hope all of our American listeners had a lovely July 4th, and we're looking forward to sharing more of our thoughts and hopefully our wisdom in the upcoming episodes in Season 7.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you're encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are two great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
And relentlessly pursuing what matters.